sur mon chemin, comme je suis bien, sans mes tracas.
You are now listening to Femme Regard Podcast with Tessa Markle and Carolina Alvarez. Femme.
Hey, fam. We have another great guest for you today, and we're getting into the nitty and gritty, and we're going to talk about entertainment law, which I know some of you guys are going to be super excited to hear about, and some of you guys are going to be like, really? Like, can't I just hire the lawyer and they can figure it out for me? But like, no, here's the point, and we talk about this in the episode today, is like, you as the client of the lawyer and the person creating your own projects and your own business have to be aware of what you're doing. You have to be aware of what you're negotiating, what you're asking for, what you're signing. Like, yeah, you're not expected to understand all of the legalese in a contract. That's what the lawyer is there to help explain to you. But you have to know what you're asking for and what you're signing away. Like, you have to have your own agency. And our guest today, who I'm going to get into in a second who he is, but that's one of the things he mentions when he looks at clients to take on is like, you know, do they give a shit? Like, are they actually going to want to know what kind of contracts they're signing, what they're getting into? All of that it's very important. So we get into a lot of things today about what an entertainment lawyer does and things that you should be aware of as a filmmaker or talent or whatever side you are as the client, things to look out for and all of that jazz. So today's guest is Joshua Lastine. And from negotiating for series on Netflix and Amazon to podcasters like Drama Queen South and large production studios, he knows what drives people to invest, put pen to paper, and to make the deal. He was a former creative artist agency, Lionsgate, and Viacom CBS attorney. And he's at the helm of Lastine Entertainment Law. So he created his own firm, protecting the artistry and livelihood of actors, production companies, writers, producers, directors, animators, social media influencers, and podcasters. So he really runs the gamut on the types of clients that he represents and the things that he does for them.
Yes, I feel like Joshua was the perfect kind of person to bring on our show in the entertainment law space. He kind of helps break down the different verticals. And I think the one that he works for, which is the transactional kind, is the space us indie filmmakers like live in and kind of really need. Like, we need a Joshua. So it was really great to understand better what he does to empower independent filmmakers in their production journeys, you know, from the start to the finish. And so it was really, really great. You guys take notes. I think you're going to get a lot of this out of this episode on also what you should bring to the table, as, you know, as Tessa was touching upon, you know, having that understanding, do your research, and, you know, find someone like him who can really help you navigate those pesky contracts. So without further ado, we welcome Joshua.
Well, thank you, Joshua, for coming on. We're really excited to chat with you.
Thank you.
We were just saying, you know, it's like we understand in theory what an entertainment lawyer does, right? But like, it's so hard to understand all of the things you cover. And we actually did have an entertainment lawyer on several seasons ago. But yeah, there's so many different things to cover. And I want today to go into several different things for our listeners so it can help them out. But I know we're personally, you know, in post with like marketing and distribution on the horizon. So that's really what we want to concentrate on and pick your brain a little bit today. But yeah, if you want to kind of just introduce yourself, Joshua, let us know how you got into all this and where you are in your career now. Give us your little backstory.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, podcast listeners, for having me. It's great to be here. I won't spend too much time talking about my bio because you can go ahead and look me up online and find out everything you want to know. But I'm Joshua R. Lastine. I'm managing partner and founder of Lastine Entertainment Law. I'm an entertainment attorney. I've been out in LA since 2011. Have worked on a number of television and film productions and have been in business now on my own since 2021. We represent a handful of production companies, studios, actors, writers, directors, producers, anyone creative who wants to get behind the camera or in front of the camera to do something cool. And I help with the help with the contract writing, drafting, interpreting, and in negotiations. So, one of the things that you're alluding to, Tessa, is that it's very convoluted and kind of unknowable what an entertainment lawyer does, because there's so many different things entertainment lawyers can do, and there are so many different types of entertainment lawyers. And even just splitting them kind of down the middle, there's a big distinction between what we would call transactional entertainment lawyers and litigation attorneys or litigation entertainment lawyers. A litigation entertainment lawyer is what you would normally think of when you think of a lawyer, right? When you see people in court and argue in front of the judge and you can't handle the truth kind of thing. You have entertainment lawyers who go to court and they handle things like contract disputes, and they handle employment and sexual harassment issues, slip and fall cases, a myriad of different things of when things go wrong legally in entertainment. Even to the extent, you have criminal cases on the defamation side and the unfortunately sexual harassment side of stuff. So Britney Spears' attorney is someone that I know, and he does a very different type of practice from the type of entertainment law that I practice, right?
Right.
And so there's that litigation aspect of it. There's the actual confrontational going to court. I'm more in the transactional realm. I work in the day-to-day, let's call it, how the sausage gets made, right? So I work, my job starts at the ideation phase. It starts with coming up with concepts, hiring writers, attaching directors, acquiring rights in IP and licensing stuff, attaching talent. I don't specifically go out and look for financing, but I help broker financing deals and work with other, again, entertainment lawyers who do financing the side of things. I help my producer clients with financing attorneys get the funds that they need in order to go from the ideation development stage to prep, principal photography, lights, camera, action, and then we're there, boots on the ground, helping with the production. We work directly with the line producers and the unit production managers to make sure that, cast is in place, locations is in place, transportation's in place, insurance in place, visual effects, costumes, wardrobes, props, set pieces. The last TV show that I worked on, we filmed in Colombia, and we had to transport.
I'm half Colombian. Shout out.
Very cool, very cool. This was a very heavy military show, and we had to have, prop guns and military grade prop weapons transported from the United States down to Colombia, and they had to go through customs and all of these manifests and shipping containers and stuff. So, there is an endless amount of things that go into the ideation phase, the development phase, and then the production phase, the boots in the ground, what you see actually on film or TV, what lives inside the bulb. And then finally to where you guys are now with post-production, finalizing the film, getting credits in place, doing marketing and advertising statements, looking at marketing and advertising obligations, doing deals with festivals, and finally lining up sales and distribution deals. That's kind of where my skill set lies. There are entertainment lawyers that do only specifically talent representation, working for actors, writers, directors. I do a little bit of that, but my business is kind of bifurcated between the two, between talent representation and development and production legal.
Joshua is our guy. That is who we've been looking to speak to, because that is what we learned last time we had a guest on, was all these different verticals that an entertainment lawyer can cover. And just going through that extensive list that you yourself, can you repeat again the sector that you're part of? Transactional, right? That's transactional.
So I draft bespoke contracts, I draft studio contracts, I read, interpret, provide language for contracts, negotiate contracts. That is, I do everything from that to writing the fine print for YouTubers and OnlyFans and stuff, where you see the little caption at the bottom that this is a legal disclaimer. So anything that is kind of legal writing based, not going to a judge or jury or anything like that, but the outward facing terms and conditions.
Yeah.
No, and that's like so important to protect yourselves in all these different kinds of ways, as you just
Yeah.
listed, and have that fine print. I mean, we were doing the best that we could on our contracts, and being so small, I felt like we could take on a lot of that, but there were definitely times where we had a friend of who was working on it, who had a sister who was a lawyer, that was able to look at the legal language, because that's just something that there comes a point you find in filmmaking, whatever stage you're at, that you just do need someone who can actually write the language for you in clear terms and make sure you're covered, because those contracts too, those generic ones, you really sometimes don't know what's actually being like put on there or not,
Yeah.
like I'm sure you're familiar with a crew deal memo, for instance, right? There's like good general basis, but sometimes you need a little more protection than that.
Right.
The devil's in the details. I have clients that want very basic crew deal memos so that they know that their crew can sign on, and they sign very quickly. But if I'm doing a production for Amazon or Apple or Netflix, those crew deal memos are going to be a little bit larger and fuller, with more legal protections for the studios themselves. So
I see.
absolutely. And I would say it's interesting. People have been making films without entertainment lawyers since the dawn of film.
Yeah.
But really, where I think it's the most important is if it's your baby, if it's your pet project, if it is your something special, you really don't want to leave it to chance.
Yeah.
I was just telling Tessa before we jumped on here, I just finished helping two first-time female writer, director, producers finish short films themselves, and in both instances, they were able to land name-worthy talent, recognizable talent, marquee talent, and that they were going to coming on and doing it essentially for free, for a favor. But still, we had to go through the rigmaroles of they have a series regular deal over at Paramount, so what advertising can and can't do on Instagram?
Yeah.
What can we do for our Kickstarter campaigns? Their reps are very the talent reps are very protective of their talent, and I don't want my producers to agree to something that they actually can't live up to just because they're pressured by the lawyer for the other side. So
Right.
yeah, lots of different aspects and avenues to cover.
Yeah. And it's, there's so many things that people obviously know that contracts go into filmmaking, right? Like it is a business like anything else. But for instance, like I've been on set a lot recently, and it's all been like friends projects, nothing big. I mean, they were even unpaid for me, but like some had NDAs and some didn't. And other friends would be like, oh, well, what were you on set for? And I'm like, well, I can't really say other than like, it was a pilot or whatever the case was. And they're like, well, wait, is this another NDA one? And I'm like, well, see, that's part of it though. It's like those simple legal things that sure, you can find, a template for something like that online, but you want to make sure that you're getting covered exactly what you need covered. For us, for our film, for instance, people asked us, like, is it okay to post social media? And we made that decision that yes, we weren't going to have people sign NDAs. They were allowed to take behind the scenes stuff. They were allowed to post it. So yeah, it's all those things that it's like, first of all, you have to decide what it is you want, what exactly you want covered, what, is going to be in those contracts, and then find someone that can make sure that is all laid out for you the way it needs to be and that everything is protected. And then, like you said, working with, whether you're a smaller production or a smaller production still, but with name talent, or, you're working with the studio, like that all plays into it as well.
And these sort of short test footage proofs of concept things with kind of more notable pieces of talent, I think they're going to become more prevalent as we move from the streamers throwing wild budgets and wild sums of money at people. We are moving back into a more indie friendly model. I see people who are traditionally in front of the camera wanting to be behind the camera and start producing things more often. So yeah, it's important to make sure that you're legally buttoned up. And honestly, every single television or film project that I've worked on has been its own separate, unique baby. Between when I was used to be outside counsel for Amazon Studios and worked on some Amazon shows, the troubles in legal pitfalls that I had to deal with on Transparent and Man in the High Castle as it relates to simulated sex and nudity were did I say Man in the High Castle? On Transparent, the simulated sex and nudity on Transparent was very different from the issues that I had on the show like Man in the High Castle, which was heavy in Nazi memorabilia and more taboo things as it relates to culture and religion sensitivities, which was very different from the Apple Plus show that I worked on, which was very heavy in military grade explosions and people jumping down from helicopters and those kind of things. So every project is different, and it takes, very clear lines of communication between the lawyer and the producers to make sure everything goes off without a hitch.
I mean, I'm sure it obviously depends on the project, but like, because you do so many different things throughout, the full life of the project, like, what do you really recommend is a good time for a filmmaker to find an entertainment lawyer? Like, do you think it really should be before you even launch into pre-production, or like when do you think?
And is there a budget threshold also, like where, you can afford one?
Black and white rules. I will tell you, the last two shorts that I did were in the $50,000 to $60,000 budgeted range. But again, they were dealing with pieces of talent that were marquee and notable, and it really could have line itself up to a sale for something bigger and further down the road. And we have to be planning in anticipation of that, so that when, if Netflix, Amazon, Disney, whomever decides to buy it and turn it into something bigger, that we have all of the necessary rights involved, and there is nothing in the chain of title that would make or preclude a potential sale. You asked me when you come in. I would say when you have money and you can afford to some degree. But even still, the number of times where I've had clients come to me and are like, hey, I'm about to sign this investment deal to take a large sum of money so I can hire you. And then I look at the investment agreement that they're about to sign, and they're signing away half of their rights, and they're making them, the financier has complete control of the budget, and they can sign off on all the EP credits. And it's like, well, let's take this back a step. I understand you will be getting money soon. Let me help you do this investment deal to get the money, and then we'll work things out and
right.
But really, I mean, you can never be too early in building relationships with an entertainment lawyer in any aspect of your career. Like I said, the gal who just finished doing a film, one of the short films I've been working with for 3 years now, and she started out as a very small horror TikToker and is now, directing a film starring Emma Raimi, Sam Raimi's daughter, and taking notes from Sam Raimi directly. And it's like, watching that progression over 3 years is so cool. But she reached out before she was anybody and started building that relationship with me because she knew where she wanted to be in 3 to 5 years.
That's smart.
And how would someone go about reaching out to you, like an entertainment lawyer? What are some things that, shows that their own credibility that they can bring to the table?
Obviously, I mean, like, it's sad to say, but your IMDb page says everything, right? Even if it's nothing that you would think anyone had heard of, the fact that you have a page and you are working and you show that you're consistently working and busting your ass, that is more impressive than just having one, background actor role on Silicon Valley, in 2016 or something like that. So me personally, I need to know that my clients work just as hard as I do, because I work round the clock, and really I can't sell you as an actor, as a producer, as a director, as a writer, unless you can sell yourself. So you have to be that good as well. It's not, I can bring 50% of the game to you, but you got to bring your talent to the table as well. So
it sounds a lot like It sounds a lot like an actor having an agent. I mean, obviously you do very different things than an agent, but just, being able to to know what to look for on both ends. You know, you as an actor want an agent that you know is going to work hard for you and make the right decisions for you. And then you as an agent want an actor that is going to work as hard as you are, you know, and you want to be able to build that trust from the very beginning and to start that relationship early on, you know, before the real work is even being done, I guess, really, you know?
Yeah, and most of the time as entertainment lawyers, if we take on actors or writers or producers, it's usually a losing game until they finally do reach where they want to go. And so it's an investment on our end just as much as it is yours to build that relationship, build that rapport. And like you said, we offer wildly different types of services between an agent, a manager, an attorney. You know, when I'm sitting on the studio side of the table and I'm doing a negotiation against a piece of talent, if they're coming at me with their agent and manager, I would say they get about 50 to 65% of the deal that's on the table. But when they bring in the lawyer, the agent, and the manager, they get 90 to 95% of the deal.
Yeah.
And you know, even in instances where it's like, you know, I have marquee talent doing favors for their friends now to star in roles. Their attorneys can be the bad guys and they can beat me up all day and say, we have marquee talent and we want this, that, and the next thing. And, you know, it's very easy for an actor to say, you know what, sorry, that's my attorney. Actor, director, producer, any piece of talent, it's easy to blame the attorney. We're easy punching bags.
But you get the job done, and it sounds like you're able to like really move the needle for a deal to happen. So I wanted to like go a little back though to, you know, as you were saying, it's an investment to start up front. So for example, that TikToker, you know, was she coming from like an actor side, a director side? And did she have any like future partnership deals or projects that she thought she was going to be assigned to? I'm curious on how early on she was able to start a conversation in her journey, other than maybe having a successful TikTok like page.
So she was building out a TikTok page, and then she had happened to. It was during the pandemic, and she was throwing like a little horror Zoom Halloween kind of special thing, and she needed help with the contracts and lining up some potential marquee horror stars to be on that live stream. And that's how we started building the relationship. And she hired me just to do a couple of contracts for that. But we obviously continued the conversation. I saw a lot of potential and value in what she's doing. I'm a big horror fan myself. The horror community is a strong community. Indie horror filmmakers are very, you know, connected and locked. And it's one of those genres that I think will always be popular and always be able to turn a buck. I was actually just looking at what movies I that came out this year that I actually liked. And I think the only movie that really blew me away this year that's come out that you guys have seen is Talk to Me. The A24 horror movie. But
first time filmmakers, and they did it. It's amazing.
So, A24 has managed to make a marquee name of themselves by making bespoke horror. Blumhouse as well. So
no, it's awesome to hear from your perspective as well, because we certainly feel that way. But it's nice to see like the way you've seen the deals done and like how it's progressed. It's still a continuous fold of new and still same kind of, you know, it doesn't have to be $1 million budgets, and yet they're still producing because they have that cult following. And I think that's like, you know, audience building is the name of the game. That's something we know, and like we worked hard on with this show and how we want to push out our films. So community is everything. So that's really awesome that she was able to like build something like that and kind of continue building it, you know, from this Zoom project. That's incredible. That's really awesome.
But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said continue to build it, because that's, I mean, you know, I moved to LA in end of 2010, beginning of 2011. I didn't know a single person in the state of California. I'm from Iowa. I'm from a small town of like 300 people. But I haven't stopped going out to lunch, dinner, and coffee with people 3-4 times a week since I landed 11-12 years ago. And
Oh my gosh.
I'm married now and my wife gets it, but I'm not home many nights of the week because I go and teach, and then after I teach I go to dinner, and sometimes after dinner I go to a show, and next morning I'm up the next morning and going to coffee and meeting an agent or manager, and then off to a lunch meeting and stuff. And it really is just planting seeds, and you never know when someone's going to remember you. You never know when the right opportunity is going to come about. Cillian Murphy, the guy from Oppenheimer, right? He was auditioned for Batman in Christopher Nolan's original Batman Begins movies, right?
Right. Yeah.
Didn't get the part. Christian Bale got the part. Christian Bale knocked it out of the park. But now Cillian Murphy's in every single Christopher Nolan movie that's come out since. So
Yeah.
Just goes to show. And
goes to show. What's her name? Lily Gladstone was about ready to quit the business when she got an email from Martin Scorsese about Killers of the Flower Moon. This town is built on, Lady Fortuna turning her wheels of fortune just at the drop of the hat. And I always tell people, clients across the board, never think that you're too high one moment because you'll be down, and never think you're too down one moment because you'll be up, because that's just the nature of this business.
Yeah, and it's so important. It's like, it doesn't matter what you do in this industry. If you're in the industry, you have to build that community and you have to get to know people. Like, I literally just had a conversation today with a friend of mine. She's like, it's so amazing to me. Like, you come from such a small town, so far away from LA, and yet I feel like you know everyone. Like, every time I talk to you, you somehow know that person, have a connection. I'm like my friends, I jokingly will call me the mayor. Like, but it's because I've made it a point to build these relationships and to keep them going strong, because it is so important.
Yeah, and I started out at CAA right after I graduated, so I had a little bit of that heavy-handedness built into me, where they were very impressed upon me early that every single day that I should be having these coffees and drinks and dinners and stuff, and they train their executives in that particular way, and it's something that I've just carried on with me everywhere that I go. So
yeah.
No, and I think everyone should. And like Tessa said, and you said, any part of the industry, whether you're an actor, producer, director, it's so important. And it can be so simple as, like you said, a lunch, a coffee, and you never know. So I want to ask now that, okay, say, you do score a meeting with a lawyer. What are things that, maybe it's hard to say red flags, but if you have any, and like other things that you think are so important that, to touch on the positive side of things that, you bring to the table, like what are some things to look out for, or things that you think are super valuable if, this entertainment lawyer is not, is it, whether it comes to response times or payment structure, or, things of that sort. Because that's what I kind of, like, in my experience, have kind of seen a little bit so far.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time thinking of red flags in particular, but there are things that make people a better client versus others. And I think the most important thing is just being respectful with our time. And what that really means is knowing when you have something that is an emergency and needs to be handled, addressed, spoken about, whatever, versus you want to have a chat, like let us know the level of priority with which that we're discussing with you, because that's going to help us be able to manage our response time. Because at any given time, I probably have about 50 emergencies happening. And if, I have someone who's, calling me consistently, but it's more along the lines of strategy and things that aren't particularly actionable now, that rubs probably lawyers the wrong way, and agents and managers too, versus using the bat signal when it's appropriate, I guess is what it is. And then again, going back to kind of what I was alluding to earlier in terms of hard work, but like, if I'm meeting somebody and they seem a little too entitled, they seem a little too like this is going to be easy, this is I'm not prepared to do anything, it's going to be my agent and manager and lawyer who's going to do everything. If they don't know the business themselves and can't have an intelligent conversation about how the business operates, that maybe is a red flag.
Yeah. No, that totally makes
And
sense.
Having, it's not bad to have big dreams by any means, but you have to have reasonable, within the realm of possibility, expectations. Like, Disney is never going to make a horror movie, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like not a talk to me A24 style horror movie. So like,
Right.
right.
it's like you have to understand some level of practicality in the business.
Yeah.
No, that's super important. Otherwise, you can't express your needs. You can't you can't build what you're trying to build if it's like not.
If I'm meeting somebody for the first time and they want me to take them straight to CAA, like, red
Oh.
flags.
Yeah.
Well, what about the flip side? What about like lawyer red flags, things that, we could watch out for in examining someone we want to build a partnership?
Really, the most important thing with picking a good lawyer is making sure that they understand where you want to go,
Mhm.
and not to be aggressive when it matters, but to know that you will fight many, many battles, and even if you don't win every single one, as long as you're moving the needle forward. I know a lot of attorneys that just kill the shit out of deals on things where it's like, man, this was not that deal to
Yes.
bring out the big guns.
Yeah.
Like, this wasn't the time to do that.
Yeah.
And I've seen that across multiple
Managers do it too. Agents do it
Managers and
too. Like,
agents do
it
it all the
happens, and
time.
it's not. Yeah.
And I was an intern at Marvel Studios once upon a time, and I was working on one of the red carpet premieres, and we had a piece of talent who was a YouTube celebrity, and they were going to be doing a red carpet address for the Marvel studio and stuff like that. And the agent, manager, and lawyer that came back to the Marvel team with the contract had just made outrageous asks. And I remember my boss at the time, being like, this is bad attorney work. And it's something that I carry with me when I go.
Yeah, that
definitely makes sense.
actually brings a good question to ask a lawyer. Like, how do you handle most kind of situations? If it comes to something like just getting a contract down, trying to land on, a specific number, like, can we have a back and forth? I mean, I think it's important that, I as a client get involved in those conversations first and make sure we're both very clear on what the ask is and maybe how we're going to go about it. And of course, like, then it's up to you to negotiate. However, I think it's important to have those conversations first before, examining a deal, with my points, for instance, and, kind of I guess, gauge the temperature of the lawyer then, and based on how their response is.
Honestly, I've tried to force all of my clients to at least read their contracts once to go through. I always start every conversation with, what do you want to get out of this deal? What are you expecting to get out of this deal? What do you understand the deal to be? And what are your important parts that need to be reflected in the deal? And let's make sure that those are covered.
Yeah.
Yes, that's so important. I think you need to have your own agency. So the moment, I feel like, I love that you push upon the client to do the reading, to do their best to understand, because it's so easy to be like, oh, I just don't know. I don't want to know. But it's like, it's your business. You need to know. Like, you need to stay with it.
I will tee it up for you in layman's terms. I will explain any particular provision, but I need you to understand, and even with the contract language itself, one thing that I do run afoul with all my not all my clients, with some of my clients is if they've never seen or read a contract in great detail, they'll be like, why is it so scary? Why are they so mean in the language? And why does it say perpetuity here and forever there and stuff? And there are some things where it's just like, that's just contracts.
How it is.
You're never gonna change that. And they're like, well, it just rubs me the wrong way. Well, then maybe shouldn't work in this town. But
Yeah.
that's more of a writers are usually the ones that get real offended by the language of the contracts.
That's funny.
But then too, even you asked me how I approach the deal. I approach every deal with the mentality that everyone is aligned in their goal in making a great product.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that end result is and how we get there, we will get there eventually, but we are at least have that in common and can always come back and be aligned in that. And yeah, we will argue and we'll tack and, you want this and I want that and whatever, but it's with the spirit of getting the deal done and getting the thing made.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome, because then you're approaching it with that positive lens of like, we're here to make this done. I'm not here to be an issue and put like a rock in the middle of the valley and we have to go then fight around it. It's like, I'm here to keep it going. So that's so important, because like you said, that's how things get stomped on, and you then have to wait, and then you're not making anything. Then we're just at a standstill. And then, then people sometimes don't even want to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, it's been a kind of a change in Swift over the last 10 years in the entertainment business, where when I started, it was very much like everything was adversarial, confrontational. Nobody was working together in real great form. Now it seems like we are all kind of in this together, maybe because of what we've all gone through in the last 3 to 5 years with the entertainment industry, ups and downs. But it's like we're all out there to just try to get stuff made.
Yeah. And I think you had mentioned that in one of the topics that you were interested in speaking on, is like really keeping current with, the trends in Hollywood. And I think that is a really important thing that maybe a lot of people wouldn't consider, is that, deals are being handled differently now than they were like 10 years ago, for instance, even 5 years ago, even probably pre-strike. I mean, that's the most, recent big news for Hollywood. So I think that is really important to keep on top of that and how those deals are handled.
Deals are ever evolving. When I first started working in television, the old television model was 12 episode front order, 14 episode back order, 22 episodes, 26 episode seasons. You had the front half of the season, the back half of the season. You had upfronts, you had advertisements, you had commercials, you had 7-year deals. Slowly but surely, all of that started to change. I started to work with marquee movie stars that were coming over and doing television for the first time. All of a sudden, episodic numbers were reduced from 24 to 12 to 10 to 6 to 3.
Right.
And now, for the 7 seasons, we're down to maybe 1 in a movie special someday. And all of that drastically changes how we approach deal making and contract negotiation.
Yeah. And I'm just curious, have you found it to change even more since the strike? I know at the time that we're recording this, Fam, because we're recording this a little earlier than you guys will get to hear it, we're at the point now where the contract has come out, but the negotiating committee has created, their deal, but now SAG members actually have to vote on it. So it's still a very kind of up in the air thing, but I'm just curious how much that has kind of change the landscape for you, or is it still just really up in the air for you kind of right now as well?
Honestly, I was hoping that things would solidify a little bit more after they reached a tentative deal, but really since the day that they announced their tentative deal was reached, my phones have been a little bit more quiet than they have all year, which is surprising. But in what I've seen and read, I haven't gone into great depths into the deal that they were able to negotiate. I understand what actors' current concerns are with the current deal and why they may not feel it's the best deal for them.
Yeah, I've been seeing more of that, and it's just kind of discouraging because it's like, we so badly want to move forward, and yet but this is a pivotal moment. We've gone through this far. Do you want to just have to go and do it all over again if you just, in a little bit later on, because you realize you messed up or it's already too late, you can't fight for what you want. So it's wild.
With regards to the deal, from everything that I know about it, I think it's the best deal that SAG is going to get. Is it a good deal? Does it
So
offer
fair.
the protections that are necessary to protect labor versus capital in an ever-changing technological market? Absolutely not. But
Yeah.
we live in a capitalist society where consent is everything, and if you can informed consent and just compensation your way to getting AI rights, then there's nothing that Uncle Sam's going to do or unions are going to do to stop you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I can have a whole podcast about it.
Okay,
Right.
we'll put a pin in that, because that just opens up so much, and yeah, it's a very interesting time to see what
that
awaits.
that leads me to another question. Again, based on some topics that you had kind of brought up that you were interested to speak on, there was one that stood out to me, was how to ask for more and not be a jerk about it. Because that's kind of, what the whole SAG thing was. It's negotiating, right? And asking for your worth. So if you want to speak on that a little bit too, because I think it's, important to know when you're coming to a lawyer, what is realistic to ask for, even though they're going to be doing the asking for you in legal terms, but to know, what's realistic for you to even be asking for. And then, if you are in a space where, okay, you can't afford a lawyer yet, or it's not quite time for you yet, to at least have a mindset of like, how do you do that and not just ruin all your chances?
Yeah, it's funny. I lean or stand on the shoulder of much taller attorneys than myself, and I'm good friends with Margot Robbie's attorney. And one of the things that he's, always impressed upon me is just blatant, outright honesty with your client. And, you may have wild expectations, you may have all these asks, you may have all these things, but let us lead you to help you manage those expectations and lean upon our expertise, because we do know what we're talking about in most 9 times out of 10. I'm not gonna say every time, but and how to ask for more without being a jerk is just that. Don't be a jerk about it. You can ask for what you're worth, and you can ask for what is right and what is fair and what is equitable, and there's nothing wrong with that, and you're not a jerk for asking for what you deserve and what is right and what is expected and what you agreed to. Oftentimes what will happen is people will make you lots of promises on the phone and in an email, but when you get that contract in hand, it's not reflective of those things. So it's not a jerk to make sure that the deal is in line, and really it's vital to the success of a relationship in a contract that both sides walk away from the table feeling like they both won. Like they don't need to have scorched earth won on everything, but both parties should walk away feeling like, hey, I want to continue this relationship. Because if you think about it, I said this the other night, but the negotiation stage is like the flirting stage of a relationship, and the dating and the courting stage, but the contract is the marriage stage. And once you sign that contract, that's about as good as it's going to get. Everything from there is going to reveal the true nature of the person you're entering into a contractual relationship with.
Yeah.
So if they're a jerk from the outset, you can expect that it will only get worse from there.
Agreed.
That totally makes sense.
That's a really good point. Yeah. And I like that it's the thought that, if you aren't happy, but you never voiced what you think you deserve, most of the times then, if you're assuming that person left out XYZ and stuff, you're just making assumptions, and like chances are they would have no problem giving you XYZ as well. So I think it's important to, stand up for yourself and in a nice way and ask. And that way you will feel more inclined to also work with that person again, because if you kind of just like do it, like you said, you might not be happy. And then, it could have been a better relationship for yourself to have. So no, I think that's a really great way of putting it, for sure.
Great life advice. Don't try to be a mind reader. Don't try to infer anything from a text or an email. Read the plain language of what it is and let it be. Don't think that you know what's going on in the subjective mind of the sender.
Right.
Even if you sense sarcasm and whatever, if you just let it be, you're way better off than trying to address it and think that, because wild miscommunications can occur
All the time. We
all
see
the
it
time.
all the time.
Yeah.
Well, selfishly, Joshua, I want to kind of get into distribution side of things because, fam, as you guys know, you're probably, if you're new to the show, we just shot our first feature film, Sync, psychological thriller. It's like Black Mirror vibes. We now made it a full feature. It touches on advanced technology, warns of the issues of how things can get out of control with the lens of toxic female friendships. So we love, love, love the story. We love that we are in post-production. It is on its wheels. And now we have some meetings lined up with distributors in hopes to pitch to distribution execs and would like to have more of those conversations lined up. So, in talks with an entertainment lawyer like yourself, what are some things that you could help with specifically in those kinds of deals?
So trying to think of how I want to phrase this. The first thing that I always say and start off with my clients is that I'm not a door-to-door salesman. I don't act as a sales rep. I don't act as a broker of distribution deals by any means. But when it comes down to getting that distribution deal in hand, distribution deals are the wildest contracts I've ever seen. Sometimes they are great, and you can really, like I was telling Tessa before we jumped on, I can tell within 2 seconds of looking at a distribution deal whether I think the relationship is going to go well or if it's going to be wonky, just on how good or how bad the distribution deal reads and makes sense and looks. It's sales agents. There's so many of them that you really can only rely on word of mouth referrals and your network and building those relationships. And same thing with the distributors too, to some degree. But those distribution deals, you're signing your baby away for 5 to 7 years. You want to make sure that the paperwork is buttoned up. And of all of the different types of contracts that I look at and review, distribution deals are 9 times out of 10 the most poorly drafted.
That says a lot. It also makes a lot of sense because I feel like those are the easiest deals without some entertainment lawyer expertise to kind of do bad for yourself on, just because there's just a lot of moving parts. There's a lot, I think understanding when they're putting in a budget for marketing and trailers and etc. I think at some point you have to understand you will have just to cut your loss, and like they will charge and put line items and you don't really know what they are, and that's just how it is. But do you think a lawyer can really help navigate to save you a little bit more in that area? Because I feel like that's where I would just be like, yeah, I can't fight you because this was your budget for that. And so, we won't get our percentage back because it's biting in. They have to recoup essentially for things like that.
Absolutely. When, again, like I said, looking at the distribution contract, if I look at their net revenue definition and it's got all of these wonky things and it's got chargebacks and this and that and whatever, then I'm kind of like, let's go underneath the hood a little bit and examine this in a little bit closer detail. But generally speaking, there are just standard things that distributors would try to charge on that we would take out. Oftentimes I see really high cash reserves on things like chargebacks and on what
I don't know what that means. Like a chargeback. Like what do you mean? What do you oops, my headphone is like
in a universe long ago, we used to sell physical media, right? DVDs, Blu-rays, and VHSs. And in a retail market space, you have to have a reserve on hand in case of massive returns, right? People returning the product. Let's imagine for whatever reason a whole entire slate of DVDs went out to Walmart and they were all, mislabeled, or they didn't work properly, or they went through an x-ray machine and they didn't scan, and all of that would be charged back to the distributor because they would have to issue refunds based on this.
Gotcha.
Makes sense.
Oh, interesting. So physical media chargebacks could be a line item that you're like, I don't want a DVD. Or I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
You froze for a second. Well, nowadays, so the evolution of contracts, right? If you're dealing with an old school distributor, maybe the language hasn't really changed or updated much. It doesn't necessarily say just physical sales. So the implication is that you got a 25% cash reserve on digital returns.
excuse me?
So yeah, again, devil's in the details.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. And what does that encompass? You had mentioned like for festivals, like what kind of contracts? You mean like a sales agent, like kind of deal? Like we got one, that one, like in that
So
kind of sense or
So a
context?
lot of times when you're applying to festivals, they're going to have your long application process and all of the rules and regulations that you have to follow to get into the festival.
Okay.
And then when you're negotiating a distribution deal, the distribution deal itself may preclude festival submissions, or it may be that you need to mutually consult on festival submissions or something to that nature. So
Wait,
just
mutually consult, like, what do you mean?
on what festivals you would be submitting to.
Oh, like they wouldn't, like, for instance, if you submitted to one, it wouldn't be okay to submit to another?
Or maybe they don't want you submitting to the Des Moines, Iowa Film Festival.
They'll like say that in a contract, for instance?
It will say that they have the exclusive right to distribute the film.
Okay. And Des Moines, Iowa can't.
Well,
because they have exclusive rights.
If they have exclusive rights, you don't have the right to distribute.
And that would happen right off the bat. Like that would be right as your app. Like that happens most of the time as you're applying. That's an agreement you would sign right away.
Well, your distribution agreement, you would sign that. The timing of it is a big thing, right? Like a lot of times you'll be applying for festivals while you're negotiating the distribution deal.
Mhm.
Understood. Yes. Okay. True. Yeah, no, it's fascinating to think about because I think what Tess and I realize is we're open to doing as many different routes and they can happen all at the same time or not, like some filmmakers can be more like, I just want to do festivals first. This is where I want to go. Like, I don't really want to do any other kind of deals yet. And some filmmakers like ourselves want to just be open to all different opportunities, which can come at various points and times.
Yeah.
So
And yeah, exactly. Again, every film or TV project is very different from one another, and every distribution strategy is going to be tailored towards whatever that thing is. If it's a Elizabeth Olsen, $1 to $2 million indie whatever, but she has a risque sex scene, they maybe don't want to dump that on Tubi on a sub-license deal or something like that. They want to have control that if you're going to submit it to a festival, you can only submit it to a Sundance or a TIFF or whatever. So that all goes into the distribution strategy, which is very much what you're relying on the distributor for, right?
right.
If you're just looking for a pump and dump, there are distributors who do that. Yeah, all types.
Totally. No, it's so interesting to like learn about this process more and try to have your own agency in it and advocate for what your needs are and find a team that really can support you because it feels so do or die sometimes. I mean, it kind of is, though. You can really get locked into a bad situation. So it's nice to know you have a team or you are aware of your options.
Look, you can get locked into a bad situation, but at the end of the day, if you're making something and you're building credits and you're getting your name out there and things are being seen, then you're winning.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
like,
nice.
yeah, you never want something to be the next frickin' John Wick or whatever, and you don't get a piece of it. Like, sure, that would suck. But generally speaking, most of the projects that I've worked on aren't that. And all of the things that we go into and all of these headaches that we have and fight about, like, at the end of the day, when that thing goes on screen and everyone gets their credit and they move on to their next project, you forget about it.
Yeah.
Right, because I feel like it's just all about it's about moving the needle so you can get to the next and hopefully bigger and more resources. So like even for us, we're not super precious about sync because it's like a bigger journey that we're on. So like it's okay. We just want to do enough to prove that we finished something, we made it, and we even got distribution. What? That's the whole name of the game.
That is impressive in of itself and is a great calling card. So
hell yeah. Let's go. As we like to say. Tessa, sorry, I cut you off.
No, you really said exactly pretty much what I was going to say. And I think, thank you, Josh, for kind of breaking that down, because there's a lot of things I don't even think we thought about. And I mean, Caroline and I are definitely new to the world of learning about distribution. And, for a while for us, it was like, okay, well, what are the different types of platforms now? There's so many different VOD platforms, and the difference between going
VOD, AVOD, SVOD,
right,
all the VODs,
and then going like the route of distribution versus like having just an aggregator, and do we get a sales rep? Like there's just so many pieces to it. But now it's like, okay, now we kind of got that down, but didn't think about the timeline of like, we know we want to submit to some festivals while we're looking for distribution, but that could, end up being a conflict too. It's just all the things you have to consider. So another great example of why an entertainment lawyer can help you out in those positions, because it's a lot for a filmmaker, especially a first-time filmmaker, to know and consider.
It's a lot for anybody.
Yeah.
It makes me dizzy most of the time.
Well, Joshua, why do you like being an entertainment lawyer? What gets you most excited about it?
First and foremost, I love film and TV. I love the art of film and television. My wife and I was just about to say, don't sleep on the PVOD, because every weekend my wife and I do a $3.99, $5.99 PVOD rental, and that's our Friday, Saturday night jam.
Gosh.
We are. I'm a cinephile. I love to study film. I love to watch film. On the weekends, we'll pick a director or an actor or a producer and try to watch their whole filmography or whatever. So I'm enamored with the art of filmmaking itself. And in particularly, I'm very big into practical effects and how people
yes, indie
films on a shoestring budget, and how you I think it was Tom Hanks's most recent book that he said, it is a miracle that any film gets made. And every time I work on a TV show or film, I feel that, because I'm like, how did we get from where we were to where we are now? And so many things have to go right in order to get there, that it is truly a miracle that something is made, let alone it's something that can touch your soul and speak to your human experience in a way that makes you feel profound about life. So that first and foremost, and feeling like I'm aiding in that. And then second, to help people who want to tell their stories. I feel like this is my skill set to give to the world. Now you guys go out and tell your stories, or you act, or you dance, or you direct, or whatever, and express yourself out in the world. And me being able to help you do that is a win for me.
Yes, I love that.
I love that.
Everybody comes
Great
together.
answer. Green flags.
My life goal is to be behind stage at the Oscars, waiting for one of my clients to get done with their award speech so that they can go off stage. We can go off stage and go have a drink together.
Yes.
I love that. That is so beautiful. And I think also it's nice to know that there are lawyers such as yourself that have that interest, that passion, that love. I mean, you hope they do. I mean, this is, like you said, it's grueling, it's overwhelming. It's not an easy position to be in. But when you really have a passion, I feel like an understanding of what the independent filmmaker, specifically independent filmmaker, right? Like it's a different, slightly different game you're playing. And, it just really spoke to our hearts, because we are just trying to make some magic happen out of nothing most of the time. And we blow our own minds all the time. I'm like, what did we just do? And it's like, but it's sick. It's like, yes, it's possible. And it's really awesome to find people such as yourself to align with, because to me, it's all about being on the same page and having that passionate understanding, especially for women in film. That's always been so important to us and what we try to do in our messaging in the community we're building and teams that we build. So anyone who's like supportive in that, we're like, yes, thank you. we need you on our side.
A lot of first-time female filmmaker clients. So
that's amazing.
Very
well,
supportive.
We'll have to chat. That all sounds like we're on the same vibe and same page. So I really appreciate you taking the time, Joshua. I know, like you said, you are working around the clock, but I do really hope that our listeners today get a better understanding of the different, again, clearly it's exciting to talk to someone like you who is really here for the independent filmmaker who's trying to bridge the gap from pre-production, production to post-production and manage all those different contracts and deals. So I know, Tessa, did you have any other last heart-wrenching questions that you just have to get off your chest before we end the show tonight?
I mean, I feel like we could keep this interview going another hour with all the possible questions, but I think that was a general overview that's really helpful to understand from the filmmaker perspective, but also, the talent perspective, or, whatever it is you're looking for legal representation for, to understand, what it is that you're covering, and that it's not just, written contracts. Like, you're helping with those negotiations, you're helping protect your client. And I know that can sound vague sometimes, but I think this episode really did a good job of breaking that down. And it showed me like, oh, hey, I think we do need a lawyer for these certain things, for sync or for future projects or whatever. So, and why it's worth it, in the end, because of course it always comes down to money. It's like, can we afford a lawyer? But it's a lot better to spend that money on someone who is working hard to protect you than to lose it down the line. So
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and I would love to come back anytime. So
yes.
Hey, Josh, welcome to the Femme community. We're here for it. Thank you so much, and
thank you.
Hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
Yes,
absolutely.
Thanks for listening to Femme Podcast. If you like what you hear, tune in every Friday for more tips on the filmmaking business and insightful conversations with industry professionals. We can only grow with your support, so please subscribe, share, rate, and review. You can also join the Femme on Patreon. For more on us, check us out at femregard.com.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.